Hello and welcome to God and Country. I hope you guys are having a great day. Here we are in the beautiful South Mississippi. It's been a beautiful day. This is our very first episode of God and Country with the purpose of getting Christians like you to engage in the political arena. I believe with all my heart that one of the reasons why our nation is in the mess that it is in is because Christians are not engaged as they should. Joining me is also Mr. Reed Cooley. Mr. Reed, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Hey, Dan. Great to be here.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And so, Reed, one of the things that I want us to accomplish with God and Country, as I mentioned in the intro, is about, just getting Christians to engage. As I look around at our country, as I look in, whether it's in Jackson, Mississippi, the capital there, whether it's in Baton Rouge, the capital there, whether it's in Washington, D.C., whether it's in, whether it's in our city halls, whether it's in the county courthouse, I see less and less Christians engaging in what I call the political arena. And so one of the things that I want to see us accomplish here is to get Christians all over the nation to engage locally, not just nationally. So many times people want to focus on D.C., right? That's where it seems like everybody's focused in on D.C., and rightfully so. People are to be focused on D.C. People are focused in on this election coming up in 2024 with President Trump versus, Joe Biden. And rightfully so, people are to be. I believe it's the most important election of our lifetime. But we have very important elections every 4 years right here locally. And we need Christians to engage. What are your thoughts?
Amen. Keep preaching, brother. I agree with every word. All those places you just listed, federal government, state government, local government, I hope that we can engage them all and do exactly what you said, that is just encourage Christians to get out there, to engage the political arena, to really stake a claim in the culture, to win this, this country back. In addition, so you and I have both been around politics for many years now, conservative politics on the right side of politics, but just as much, I'm interested in the culture as well, like what we can do to foster a culture, in this country, maybe starting with the state, but obviously America more broadly, where we can foster that culture where Christians are encouraged to get out there, to engage, the political arena, and really, to kind of make the case for Christ, as it were. So I'm pumped, man. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, me too. One thing you look at when you look at the left, right? You look at the woke. I call them the woke crowd. That they're trying to absolutely brainwash our children. They are putting unbelievable at some of the stuff that I'm hearing and some of the stuff that I'm even seeing that's happening in some of our schools around our country, where they are putting litter boxes in some of these classrooms because some of these children, they've been brainwashed, and they want to come in and some pretend they're going to identify as a cat.
What?
It's insane. Identify as a bird, and teachers have to even call them by different names.
So do the cat students want to eat the bird students? Like what's going on?
I don't know, but it's craziness. It's absolutely insane that this is going on right here in America. But I got to give them props, to the woke agenda because they're being very vocal. They're being very loud. That crowd that's pushing that transgender garbage, down our young people's throat. That crowd they are loud and they are upfront and they are letting everybody know where they stand. That crowd that's for abortion, that's trying to shove abortion down our throat, right here even in Mississippi and all over the nation, that crowd is loud and they are vocal and they are upfront, because they're trying to get their woke agenda pushed and they want it to thrive right here in America. And unfortunately, so many Christians, we're timid. Right? We're timid and we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Well, it's about time that we start hurting somebody's feelings. Because we're losing our country and our country's on a fast track to hell. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to lose our country. If our founding fathers could see where we're at today.
Oh, man.
They would roll over in their grave. Could you imagine George Washington?
Well, Dan, I have to go to one of your sermons one day because I've got to tell you, brother, you are speaking my language here. I've noticed a lot of different kinds of transformations in the world of American politics, just throughout my teens and in my 20s as I was discovering my own sort of political identity, as I was becoming more engaged in politics, as I was, like I said, as I was coming of age. It seemed like a pretty accepted, axiom whenever I was in, like I said, my teenage years, so maybe 10, 15 years ago, that America was becoming a less religious country and more specifically a less Christian country. I only agree with one of those now. I do think that we are becoming a less Christian country. I think much of what you alluded to with this woke insanity, this transgender ideology in our public schools, that's one of many symptoms of that. but we're not becoming a less religious country necessarily. I think that it's been accurately noted by conservatives over the last decade or so that there is a new religion that is taking over not just America, but really the entirety of the Western world. It is this religion, this massive cult, if you will, of wokeism, of leftism, all of this thing. This transgenderism is just one of the many dogmas sort of inside this new religion. So what I feel like I'm seeing and what I hope that we can defeat with God and country, maybe we can lay a few foundations for it here with this show, is defeating this new religion that is supplanting Christianity as the dominant religion in the West.
Yeah, I agree. You know, one of the things you mentioned about, you know, a sermon, occasionally, you know, I will get fired up, you know, in the pulpit, you know, about certain issues. And occasionally, you know, not too often, but I mean, from time to time, you know, I might. Especially if there's something major going on in the nation. You know, like whenever Roe versus Wade was, you know, being fought there in D.C. and, you know, before, you know, the Supreme Court, you know, came out with their opinion and their vote, you know, to overturn Roe, which I think was a great thing, you know, for our country. I was a little fired up in the pulpit, you know, the Sunday before and the Sunday after about standing for life. I got an email not too long ago, you know, this gentleman wrote me an email, and he was just stating, you know, that, you know, he thinks I'm a little too political in the pulpit, you know, and that, you know, I say, you know, too many things, you know, politically. And I emailed back, you know, and I even said this in my pulpit Sunday night, you know, which no man is going to tell me what I can or cannot preach, you know, from behind my pulpit. No government, no man is going to dictate, you know, the message. You know, but I said in the pulpit Sunday night, I didn't realize fighting for the life of the unborn was political. I thought that's something, like you said, I think that's a moral issue. I think that should be, every Christian ought to be fighting for that. I didn't realize that fighting for our children, you know, against this transgender ideology that's sweeping in our nation, I didn't think that was political. I mean, that is just common sense to me.
That should be. That's just moral. That's basic, you know, decent ethics.
Absolutely. I didn't realize that was political. I didn't realize it was political to stand and say that our children are to be able to pray in school. You know, that's not political. I mean, that is just, to me, that is common sense. That is First Amendment rights that we have, you know, that are according to our Constitution. I mean, our God-given rights. And so whenever you look at what's happening in our nation, they want to silence our voice and give the left a microphone.
Yep.
That's what they want to do. And whenever you look at a lot of your news stations and a lot of your news outlets, that's exactly what they want. They want us to be zipped. They want to put a zipper on our mouth, but yet they want to give that left-leaning woke agenda crowd, they want to give them a microphone. And you look at Facebook. Look what's happening on Facebook. You know, look what's happening on TikTok. You know, look what's happening on Instagram and even Twitter until Elon Musk, you know, bought Twitter. I mean, all of these different social media platforms, they want to silence the Christian, they want to silence the conservative, and they want to amplify, you know, the left. And that's what's happening, even TV, and that's what's happening all across. And that's one reason why I appreciate, you know, things like the Mike Lindell, you know, TV and other organizations and other news outlets that we can allow our voice to be heard, because I think it's very important, especially if we're going to reach that next generation.
Right. Well, you were talking about big tech there. So, for example, you know, how bad censorship on Facebook has gotten, as well as TikTok, basically just an arm of the CCP at this point. Twitter, you know, /X, what it's called now, prior to the time that Elon Musk bought it. I think it's important to keep in mind that big tech, big pharma, big government, these are really just extensions of the same kind of enemy that we're fighting. I'm encouraged by the fact that more and more conservatives seem to be really embracing the fact that all of the political battles that we face today are just extensions of a much deeper and longer-lasting spiritual war, right? All of our great political battles are just extensions of a sort of spiritual battles that are taking place here. I'm seeing much more of that kind of rhetoric that's sort of occupying the world of politics these days, especially among conservatives. I'm seeing, you know, exactly what you're talking about. People, whether they're converting to Roman Catholicism, whether it's the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, they're calling out for Christ again. Because I think what we are noticing, not just in America, but across the West, is that people understand that this mess that Western civilization has gotten into, there's no way out of it without Jesus Christ. There's no way out of this mess. He's the moral absolute. He's the moral standard. Really, all of Western civilization is predicated on the sacrifice of Christ, on the message of Christ. It really goes all the way back to Him. So I'm seeing more and more of that starting to take place. But over the last year or so, I've really begun to refer to our enemies in politics and in culture as simply the enemy, maybe with an uppercase E, because to me, that encapsulates the fact that we're fighting a spiritual war, we're fighting a cultural war, and we're fighting a political war, all sort of put together. So whenever you refer to it simply as the enemy, that sort of encapsulates all of that. Plus, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, so spoiler alert. And if you read the Lord of the Rings books by chance, hopefully we have some Lord of the Rings fans in the audience. You'll hear like some of the heroic characters refer to Sauron, the Dark Lord, as the enemy, right? So it's a little bit of my nerdiness channeled into my political outlook and such things. But I am noticing, obviously a lot of negative transformations in the world, but some positive as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned Lord of the Rings. I've never watched Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
and
man.
I've never even read.
We have to change that, man.
I've never read one of the books. I've never watched it. And so, but I'll put that on my to-do list. I'll put that on my to-do list.
But you will get so much out of it, man. So whenever you read Tolkien, Lewis, the great Christian writers, I would say some of the most important and pivotal contributors to the great Christian literary canon, man, you'll get so much out of it. I mean, and I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler alert to you, but the audience. The Lord of the Rings is really, it's a deep theological work. So Tolkien, he was deeply Christian. He was Roman Catholic. He was deeply Christian, and he was pouring his theology into every single page of that book. And,
so it's a movie book?
Well, so the movies are based off of much older books that he wrote in the 1940s. So, he wrote The Hobbit.
Okay, I got you.
That came out in 1937. Then, less than a decade later, he started working on The Lord of the Rings. It was originally 7 books. He broke it down to 3. But
how many movies are there?
3. And if you watch the extended edition of the trilogy, it's 14 hours. That's 14 straight hours. So it's a lot of
14-hour movie?
It's 3 movies, 14 hours over 3 movies. So
oh wow, so
you really got to sit down and just set aside some time to marathon these things, man. So maybe get plenty of your sweet tea that you've got here. Get some popcorn and just sit down and binge it, right? But like I said, I am noticing what I think are some positive developments in the world out there. It's not all negative. One of my role models philosophically is actually Dr. Ron Paul, right, the former congressman from Texas. And one thing that he still emphasizes, even to this day, is despite all the darkness, despite all the tyranny, you have to find a way to stay optimistic.
Yeah. I like what you were saying a while ago about Jesus, about Christ. And Sunday, we're celebrating Easter, Sunday. And so which is one of the biggest days of the year. Obviously for Christianity. We're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I made a Facebook post the other day, and my Facebook post just simply said this: Jesus is the answer. He's the answer.
Bingo.
He's the answer. And so you look at the world's problems. What is the answer? Jesus. And, people want to talk about, all these different issues, and Jesus solves all of them, whenever you look at, the different issues. But He is the answer. And I like how you brought that in, about Christ. And we do need to turn to Christ. Whenever you talk about the spiritual battle and this political battle, it's all the same players. On when you look at, the side, that is trying to brainwash our children, or this left-wing woke that wants us to be quiet. I mean, that wants to just brainwash our children and just lead our children down a path of destruction. I mean, it's the same crowd that is also anti, Christ. Those people, they want to silence us, not just in the political arena, but they also want to silence us in church. And they don't want us involved, and they don't want us engaged. And that is one reason why this show, I believe, is so important, God and Country, because it's trying to let Christians know that you have a right. Yes, you have a right to be involved in your church. You have a right to be involved, obviously, in your home. But there's another arena that so many Christians have vacated, and that is the political arena. Because the left wants to push this ideology of separation of church and state. And I do believe in separation, whenever it comes to the state staying out of the church's business. I think the state are to stay out of the church's business. But I think the church, the people, you better be involved in what's happening in your government. Because if you're not, you're going to find yourself chained and not able to do anything whenever it comes to speaking out about what you believe. And so we have to be engaged, and we have to be involved.
Well, I wish we had an amen button right here on this little table between me and you where we're sitting here talking. Your Algebra 1 teacher might not have a sense of humor. If you write Jesus, next to some equation that you're responsible for solving. But whenever it does come to some of the bigger picture, or all the bigger picture questions that we have in the world, I mean, it really does, go back to Christ. Questions of morals, questions of ethics. You and I both patriots, both on the conservative liberty side of things. I think you can actually trace this, back to him, ancestrally, we might say, like biologically almost. Without Thomas Jefferson, there's no modern idea of freedom, right? Without John Locke, there's no Thomas Jefferson. Without Thomas Aquinas, there's no John Locke. And without Jesus, there's no Thomas Aquinas, right? Mm-hmm. So this is something that I think about a lot. It's like, obviously, Christ, the most impactful, person in the history of the world, without question. There's no one else that even Julius Caesar and the great legacy that he left behind comes nowhere near, just how much Jesus Christ changed the world. And Islam, the world's second largest religion, even considers Jesus to be their second most important prophet. So Jesus must have been a pretty impressive guy, to build the world to be the foundation of the world's largest religion and be pretty important in the world's second largest religion too. Even Muslims have a pretty high view of Jesus, although they disagree with us on the most important points.
Right.
Of course, right? So yeah, I mean, we need an offering plate in here. I feel like we're having church now.
We could take up an offering, and I need to help pay my light bill. And that might be a blessing. Back to talking about Jesus and Christianity, and I'll touch on a subject right now that most will be scared to touch, and that people want to say that we have that our country has a racist problem, and whenever it comes to the white man versus the black man, and the news media wants you to think that. I mean, the news outlets want you to think that America has a race problem. But I'm here to tell you that America doesn't have a race problem. America has a problem with their relationship with Christ. Because if you love Christ, listen, I don't care what color the person is, you will love them. The Bible talks about how can you say you love God when you hate your brother whom you can see? It's an impossibility. Don't tell me you love Christ and you don't like somebody because of the color of their skin. It's not that you have a race problem. It's that you have a relationship with God problem. And if you get that relationship right with God, all other relationships will be right. And that goes to every area of life. It goes to your marriage. It goes to your relationship with your boss who you work with, your co-workers. It goes to your relationship with your children. If that relationship with Christ is what it ought to be, then, all other relationships will be right. And so that is something that we as Christians, yes, in this political arena, yes, we have to fight. We have to stand for what we believe, and we need to be vocal about what we need to believe, and we need to have a backbone and be bold as a lion and stand for what we believe and stand unapologetically. Like, I'm not apologizing for being pro-life, and I'm not apologizing for saying that there's only two genders, and I'm not going to apologize for saying that you're not going to brainwash my children. I'm not apologizing for any of that, but I'm also going to stand firm, but I'm also going to be a Christian. I believe that you can stand firm, but you can also be a Christian about it. You
might say that one is actually necessary for the other.
Correct. And so I like what I said to a friend of mine last week. We were talking, and I said we need to stand firm, but we don't have to be a jerk, right?
Right.
We don't have to be a jerk. I mean, we can be kind to people. We can be. I can politely tell you that you're not brainwashing my children. I can politely tell you.
Hey, that's difficult to do, but you can do it. Theoretically, you can pull it off.
You can do it. I can politely tell you that there's only two genders. You're either male or female. I can politely tell you those things, and stand for what we believe. And that's something that we just all need to, and that comes back to, I don't want to get too much into this, but that comes back to walking with Christ, yielding to the Spirit, and all those type of things. I want to read you a verse. I love this verse. Proverbs 29:2, talking about Christians being engaged in the political arena. Proverbs 29:2 says this: when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And here's my question, right? How can the righteous be in authority? How can the righteous be in a political position? And I don't like to call them political leaders because they are political servants. But how can they be there if they don't run?
Right.
And two, how can they be there if other Christians don't vote for them? And three, how can they win? How can they run and win if Christians don't engage? And how can they run and win if Christians don't give? And so that verse is very important. The righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. Listen, when Donald Trump was president, and I know Donald Trump ain't the most righteous person, right? And I wasn't voting for a pastor, whenever I voted for Donald Trump. You know, I was voting for the president. I was voting against Hillary Clinton, and I was voting against, you know, Joe Biden. And of course, I'm very pro Donald Trump, and I don't make any apologies for that. But whenever he was in authority, the righteous, the people of faith were rejoicing. You know, and you talking about, you know, God blessing our country during those years, and then look at what he did for Israel. And then look what he did with the Supreme Court.
Right.
You know, overturning Roe versus Wade. Probably, this is my opinion, the greatest thing that Donald Trump did as president was his nominees to the Supreme Court.
Amen. Absolutely.
Could you imagine if Hillary Clinton was president?
Oh, man. Oh, it would be over. It would be over.
It'd be unbelievable.
Yep.
And so that's another, I mean, there are so many things that we're going to get into over the next several weeks of this show. But that is just one example of if Hillary Clinton had been president, Roe would still be the law of the land.
We would have 3 more Ketanji Brown Jacksons on the court, beyond who we have now, right?
Unbelievable is what we would have right now. And so, but that goes back to Christians need to be engaged. Christians have to be engaged on every area, from the courthouse to the city hall to the Capitol building in their state, all the way to Washington, D.C. We must be engaged and must be involved.
Well, I think about Proverbs and Psalms a lot in particular because there are these recurring themes that I find in those, as well as elsewhere in Scripture, but especially in Psalms and Proverbs about wisdom, right? About how the Holy Spirit, you know, will willingly give wisdom to those who ask for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that whenever we talk about how Christians can get elected, or how they can run, or how they can make a change, I really think that at the very beginning is wisdom, right? And sometimes I think about the example of the Apostle John and his brother James. Fast forwarding to the Gospels here, you know, you probably remember, what was the nickname that Christ gave James and brother John? Boanerges, right? The sons of thunder.
Oh, yeah.
But it also meant sort of like sons of rage, right? You know, they were very impulsive. They were rash. You know, they were asking for Jesus to call lightning down on the Samaritans, right? And Jesus had to scold them 3 times, get them to calm down, right? So I think that's a very obviously we need to be passionate. We need to be fired up. We need to be engaged, right? You know, we're called the church militant for a reason. But I think that wisdom also plays a very key role here, right? We need to be measured. We need to be smart with how we go about things. We spend a lot of time talking about the federal government, the state government, the local government, how we can engage those. I think where some of the most heinous attacks are happening is on the smallest level of government of all, and that's the family, right? And that goes exactly back to what you were talking about 15, 20 minutes ago or so, right? The family, that's the smallest and most intimate form of government, the most local form of government of all, and it's the most important form of government. I mean, it really is. But we see this insanity where they're trying to tell our kids that there are 69 genders. They're trying to castrate them, to amputate them, to mutilate them, do all these horrible things to them. Whenever I, and I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this transgender insanity over the last couple of days in particular, and I had a thought occur to me about just the deeper nature behind some of this. Whenever a person or a group of people or an entire ideology wants to transcend gender, right? They want to transcend biological sex. They want to transcend reality. That means they want to transcend nature. That means they want to transcend nature's law, and by default, nature's God. Whenever you talk about elevating humanity, or this idea of elevating humanity on a level that rivals God, or you think you can be above God somehow, that's a Luciferian idea. Mm-hmm. That is the exact inversion of what it is that we stand for, right? So I think that, whenever we're talking about our political enemies and the ideas that they're advancing, I don't shy away from labeling it exactly as I see it, which is something satanic, which is something Luciferian, which is something just absolutely diabolical, absolutely rotten to its core. Like I said, I don't think that making the mistake of the Apostle John that he was making in the very beginning, and his brother James being too rash is necessarily the right move. But we need to understand what we're up against. I think that's where wisdom comes, and I think that's why I call on the Holy Spirit whenever I'm getting ready to speak in front of people. I did so in a prayer I had right before I came on this show. It's so important just to try to carry on the wisdom that Scripture tells us to have. That's why I love Proverbs. I'm glad you brought Proverbs into this.
Yeah. Proverbs 29:2 is one of my favorite verses. When you were talking about the righteous, ruling, or the righteous are an authority, the people rejoice. And I agree with everything you just said. Whenever you look at, whenever you look at the direction, where that left is trying to go, where there is no God. You're your own judge. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break this to you, but there is a Creator, and one day you and I are going to stand before Him. And you and I will give an account to an almighty God one day. And every single one of us are going to stand before Him. But you have that left that is trying to destroy all of that. And you go back to the home. It's an amazing thing when you talk about the home. I could spend hours talking about the home situation whenever you have the father, the mother, and you have the children. And whenever you look at our TV shows and the direction that some of these TV shows want to take, where they destroy, they want to destroy the man in the home. They want to act like masculinity is a problem, and that is wrong on so many levels. And we need to be men in our homes. And if we have boys and teenage young boys, we need to raise them men. But we need to raise men that stand firm. But we need to raise men that know how to take care of their sisters and take care of their moms and take care of their wives and be the men of the home. Be courageous, be strong, but also be caring and be loving and be gentle, according to what the Bible talks about. And so, but you look at some of these TV shows where they're trying to destroy, that man in the home, where they try to act like, that
the man is the lazy fat doofus who sits on the couch. He eats potato chips.
Yeah, absolutely.
The mom runs the home. She's the breadwinner. So whenever I was growing up watching Disney Channel, I noticed this too. Like in my teenage years, I thought there has to be some sort of agenda behind this.
Absolutely.
It's a recurring theme that I saw over and over and over again, right?
When you don't have mom and dad in the home in their proper roles, and I'm not talking about this, where they, you have some people out there where they believe, that the woman, shouldn't have any, job outside of the home and all that. I'm not there. My wife, she's a realtor and she's very engaged and very involved, and she has 2 businesses that she runs, and so she's very engaged and very involved. Here's how I see the role in the home. You have the man, and then my wife, who is, I believe my wife is the manager of our home. She oversees our home. She is running the day-to-day operations at our home. I mean, she knows what's going on in this house. When it comes to the children, when it comes to their homework and just everything that goes on, in the home, with my wife. But we're a team, and we run our home together. Now, one day we're going to stand before God, and I will give an account for our home. And I am so thankful that God has given me the wife that He has given me, to where we are a team, where we work together. And I like to consider us the winning team, when it comes to our children, whenever it comes to our church, whenever it comes to our ministry together, and everything that we're doing together, it's that man and that wife, where yes, I'm the man of the home. Yes, ultimately, I do make the final decisions in our home, but I listen to my wife. And if my wife says, hey, we need to do this, I'm going to listen to my wife. God has given my wife abilities and intuitions and wisdom that I don't have. And God has given me things, that my wife doesn't have. And so God has put the man and the woman together. And if they are operating within their roles, you will have a winning team home.
Yep.
And I believe that's what we have here, in our home. And I say this all the time, and I love to use this illustration. I like whenever I go home, when I go to 18237 Highway 53, Gulfport, Mississippi, when I come on this property, it's like my little plot of heaven.
Yeah.
When I come here, when I come in my home, man, it could be storms out there. It could be, everybody's going crazy. It could be fights going on out there. This whole world can be falling apart. But when I walk in here, it's that peace.
This is Dan Carr's castle, right? I'm sitting in Dan Carr's castle right now.
This is my home.
I'd be in a castle today.
That's right.
That's awesome.
But there's that peace, and that I can't explain. There's that joy, that no matter what's happening out there, when I come here, man, it's like everything's fine. And that goes back to that relationship between that man and the woman, between my wife and I. But these TV stations and these TV shows, they're trying to destroy that. They want to act like and pretend that, if you're a man in your home, then there's something wrong with that. I like a gun-toting man.
Toxic masculinity is one of their stupid phrases, right?
Yeah, and everybody's so scared to talk about it. They're scared to speak out about it. But we need men. We need men to stand up. I'm so thankful. When you look at our founding fathers, I'm thankful that there was some men that told the king to kick rocks, and we're gonna build a nation right here. We're gonna declare our independence. Those were men who were willing to stand, men that had backbone, men that said, you can do what y'all want, king, but we're going to declare our independence from you, and we're going to build the greatest nation in the world. And that's what they did. And so we need men like that today that are willing to stand strong, that have courage that have a backbone. So many men today are spineless. They don't want to stand. They're scared they're going to offend somebody. Well, if you're not offending somebody, then you probably ain't doing nothing. And I know that's not probably good English. And so I'm sorry, English majors out there, but you probably ain't doing nothing. And so if somebody's not getting offended, and so somebody's going to get offended, I guarantee somebody's already gotten offended because of what I said about, the woman in the home. And that's fine. You're okay. And my wife is probably the happiest woman in the world. And if just ask her and she'll tell you. And so, but anyway, we have a great relationship, my wife and I. And but my point is, we need men to stand to be men. And we need ladies to be ladies. And I need to have my wife on maybe the show and let her talk for a little bit. And but being a lady and standing strong and let your voice be heard, and speak out for things that you believe and that you stand for. And so we don't need to cower down. Now's not the time to cower down. I know we're in 2024. I know this world's going crazy, and but now's not the time. Now's the time to stand and be courageous, like Joshua said. Be strong and courageous. Stand, and that's what we must. We must do that.
Well, something tells me that the American Revolution might have had a different outcome had the founding fathers, been questioning their gender, had purple hair, or if they've been scared of guns. Something tells me it might not have gone, the same way. But I think that obviously you're exactly right. With how everything begins at the home, right? I think that we're up against an enemy who looks at what you just described, though. So the idea of the nuclear Christian family. So a father, a mother, few kids, dog named Spot. They see that as something inherently oppressive, as something puritanical or tyrannical in some other way, right? That's the kind of enemy that we're up against. I was talking with another good friend of mine last week, also a Christian, and it dawned on us both that we both know more people our age, so millennials, we both know more people about our age who come from divorced homes than from married homes, right? So he said that he felt very fortunate that his parents had remained married all the way throughout, and they're still married to this day, thank God. But almost every other person I'm friends with, or I've been friends with, that I've gotten to know, pretty well, they come from divorced homes. It was around 2010, the statistic was about half of all marriages fail. It's gotten so much worse. I think now it's 60%, so around 60%. 6 out of 10 marriages in America fail. I think that that's another one of the many assaults that we see on the family unit between the brainwashing of children, the distortion of children, the mutilation of children in some of these more heinous cases, or teaching them that they're cats and birds and dogs and giraffes and everything else, like you said, or the divorce, or the attack on the father, the father component of it all. We're being told that kids don't really need two moms, or they don't need a mom and a dad. They can have two moms, or they can have two dads, and they'll be just fine, or maybe some other kind of family arrangement, right? So we're seeing a distortion of the family unit by people, by an enemy, like I said, uppercase E, by an enemy who sees the nuclear happy Christian family unit, the functional family unit, as something tyrannical. G.K. Chesterton, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, maybe the greatest Christian apologist of all time. I was reading one of his books, Orthodoxy, last week, and he talked a little bit about the family, and he said something to me that really stood out. He said that people who hate the family actually hate the world. It's not the family they hate the world, because the family is just a reflection of the outside world, right? So like your Uncle Danny hates your sister Susie's theatrical ambitions because there's a part of the world that hates that as well, right? Your brothers are competitive with you growing up, right, in sports and whatever else, because the rest of the world's going to be competitive with you whenever you're an adult and you're in the workplace, right? The family is just a microcosm of the world. So when we talk about this, unraveling of the family, which I would say has taken place over the last 80 to 100 years, I feel like that's my historical estimate. Whenever we talk about the unraveling of the family, the basic unit of society, I think that helps us account for why, the whole world is unraveling, because it's like the DNA strands of civilization are unraveling, at the seams.
And I'm going to take this a step further.
Okay.
Because here's what I believe.
I'm on the edge of my seat, man.
Here's what I believe. I believe that you're right. The world is a reflection of the home, and the home is a reflection of the church. When you look at the church and the direction that the church has made over the last 50 to 60 years, and the direction the church is going, and then you look at the home, the direction that the home is going, then you look at the world. The church, listen, I say this as kindly as I can. The church has gotten soft.
I totally agree.
The church is more concerned about attracting a crowd than speaking the truth.
With modernizing itself.
Absolutely. Right? The church is more concerned today about putting on a show than they are about lifting up Christ. The church is more concerned today about putting on a concert and how they look and about the smoke and the bands and all of this than they are about lifting up Christ. And so when you look at the church and you see the direction of the church and you see where the church is going and you see that the church is the lifting up Christ, is not like it used to be. And the way that the church is, the trending of the church, we got to keep up with modernization. Yep. We got to keep up with the world in order to attract. And the church is about, whenever the church is about attracting instead of deflecting people to Christ, that's when you have a problem in the church. And when you see the direction that the church is going over the last 50 to 60 years, there's no wonder that our children today are having, I might be a dog or a cat, or the home is so messed up. It's because the church has lost its salt. The church has lost its salt. And so I agree with you that the world is a reflection of the home, and the home is a reflection of the church. And so it is so important. That's why our churches, that's why our preachers, we've got to continue preaching truth. We cannot back off, and because we're so wanting to fill up our church, with people that we're scared to preach the truth. I believe this. I believe that there are people out there that want to hear the truth. I believe that I know there are. Yep. Because in my church, like my church Sunday, it's going to be packed out. So I can assure you that Sunday morning, it's going to be packed out. And I know it's Easter Sunday, but the next Sunday, it's going to be packed out. There are people out there that are looking for somebody that's going to speak truth. That's going to just stand on the Word of God and be honest and just shoot straight. And there are still people like that out there. And that's what our country needs. Our country needs men behind the pulpit that are willing to speak truth. And if everybody gets mad and leaves, they still speak truth. And so I just want to encourage preachers out there, man. Don't back off of truth. Now, we need to be kind. I believe in being kind. I believe in all of that. But let's not back off of truth. There are churches. You want to talk about makes me sick? Yep. This makes me sick. There are churches out there that for Sunday, in their advertisement, they're not even wanting to put Christ. They're not even wanting to use the word resurrection. They're not even wanting to use the blood. They're not even wanting to use these things because they might offend somebody.
Right.
Well, what in the name of heaven do you think Easter is about?
Hey guys, let's take a break from the show for just a second to talk about our generous sponsor, MyPillow. Look, MyPillow is quite simply the finest pillow on the market today. MyPillow's patented interlocking fill adjusts to your individual sleep needs regardless of your sleeping position. This innovative fill then holds that position all night, helping you fall asleep faster and actually stay asleep longer. The founder and owner of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, personally guarantees that MyPillow will be the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own. And I'll add my own guarantee as well. And right now, you can get up to 80% off of all MyPillow products, including bed sheets, slippers, towels, down comforters, mattress toppers, and even coffee when you go to mypillow.com/midnight ride or go to mypillow.com and enter the special promo code Midnight Ride. That's no space in between midnight and ride. Remember, enter promo code Midnight Ride, that is MIDNIGHTRIDE, and save huge while getting the best night's sleep you've ever had. And on the other hand, what I feel like I'm seeing in churches, or what I have been seeing in churches, is the rainbow flag being draped from the pulpit. Not so much in the Deep South. I don't see it quite as much here, thank God. But in some of the Northeastern churches and the Midwestern churches, I see it on the libs of TikTok, on Facebook, really everywhere on social media. Maybe one of the things that's not censored on social media these days are these images of churches draping the rainbow flag, where the cross should be, right? Or I actually read an article from The Guardian. It was an article published in 2012, but it was from an Anglican priest. This is a guy over in the UK, and he wrote that Jesus is gay. He said Jesus is probably gay, right? Just all these kinds of heresies, these ridiculous kinds of notions, and these perversions of our religion, of Christianity, right? We are called to be defenders of the faith. I don't really believe that it's our responsibility as Christians, in particular Christian men, to shave our head in donut format like Friar Tuck or a Dominican monk, hole ourselves up in a monastery and not engage the world, shelter ourselves from the world like a hermit. I really believe that we're called out there to confront evil, to fight the evil in the world, right? That's a key part of my theology, my way of trying to understand the world through a biblical lens, is that we're on this earth, to fight evil, to take stances on things, to defend our families, to defend the family, to fight for justice, to fight for liberty, to fight for freedom. But I loved what you said about how so much of the corruption of the family is really just downstream from what's happening to the church, right? There's a writer at the Blaze, maybe you've heard of him, Aaron McIntyre. I want to borrow one of his quotes. He uses it over and over again on Twitter. He says that liberalism will hollow out your religion and wear its skin as a trophy. And I feel like that's what's happening to Christianity. When I see this sort of new world religion, this cult, so to speak, leftism, wokeism, whatever you want to call it, right? And I see the cultural component of this new religion. I see it's hollowing out Christianity. It's wearing its skin as a trophy, right? So back to my remarks at the very beginning of our discussion here, I don't believe that we're becoming a less religious world. I think that we're becoming a deeply puritanical world, right? Going back to the Lord of the Rings again, there's the Dark Lord Morgoth, right?
I'm going to watch it.
You have to, man. So this is actually a Silmarillion reference. This is the book that came before The Hobbit. I don't mean to nerd out too much here, but it is relevant, I promise. One of the things that J.R.R. Tolkien writes about Morgoth, one of the villains, is that he cannot make. He can only mock, right? And I feel like that is so profoundly relevant to what we're fighting here. We're not fighting people who can really create very much of anything. They can only distort. They can only mock. They can only just misconstrue, what's already been made, right? So I feel like that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at people who are a sort of a shameful and dark and perverted mockery of the civilization, like I said, of Christendom, of exactly, what led us to the world we have today.
I agree. I want to read from this book. Have you read the book, The Spiritual Price of Political Silence?
I have not, man.
So this book, it talks about, about Christians on why we're in the mess we're in. And a lot of it has to do with the Christians have not been engaged like we should. Let's talk about 2016 for a second before I read from here. I remember in 2016, whenever we had, 17 candidates on the Republican ticket. I remember I think there was 17. You had Ted Cruz, you had Carly Fiorina, you had
Jeb Bush,
yeah. Marco Rubio.
Rand Paul was there.
Rand Paul.
Yeah.
There was a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
And I was, look, please don't hold this against me, but I was Ted Cruz. I was a Ted Cruz guy, but my son, Quitman, who was much younger than I, at the time, was 7 years, he was like 9 years old. He was Donald Trump. He was Donald Trump from day one. And Quitman he would sit in here with me and watch every debate. And we would either watch it on my computer, watch it on the TV, but he would watch every debate. And from day one, he was Donald Trump. Well, I was Ted Cruz, from day one. Of course, I'm Donald Trump now. But I remember in 2015 and 16, I'm a part of a ministry called Mission to America. And our goal is to get pastors and Christians to go to D.C. and meet with their legislators, meet with their congressmen, meet with their senators, and have prayer with them. We're not there to talk about any issues. We're there just to pray with them. And I've been to D.C. I don't know how many times. And I can't tell you how many congressmen that we've met with and how many pastors we brought from all over the nation. Probably, I guess, maybe every state, or close to it. I've been to Fort Mississippi many times and had prayer with my senators and pray with my congressmen. And I don't agree with my senators and congressmen on every issue.
Right.
We have our differences. But I can promise you this, that every single day of my life, I pray for my senators and my congressmen. And every day, Congressman Mike Ezell, I pray for that man every single day. I saw him last night, and I reminded him, I'm going to pray for you in the morning. Every day I pray for Senator Sidney Highsmith, Senator Roger Wicker, every day. Do we have our differences of opinions? Absolutely. But those people that are in D.C., I pray for them every day. And I believe that we as Christians are to be praying for them every single day. And I don't believe there ought to be a day that goes by. I pray for Joe Biden every day. I pray for his wife. I pray for his son every day. I pray for our vice president every single day. And I pray for her husband. I pray for her family. As I did when Obama was there. And as I did for his for his 2 daughters and for his wife, and as I did for President Clinton and his wife Hillary, and as I did for George Bush, and I mean every one of them. I believe we ought to pray for them every day. I believe, now my prayers might be different. I might have different things that I'm praying for, but I pray for them every day. My point is this. In 16, it was easy to get preachers and Christians involved. I mean, all you had to say was Hillary Clinton's going to be the next president if you don't, and everybody was ready to roll, man. I mean, we had literally thousands of Christians coming to D.C., to pray for our country. I mean, like, all the time. I mean, they was on fire in 2016. On fire. But 2020, and I know this for a fact because I can sense this personally because I was involved in the same ministry in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20. In 2020, the fire was not there. It wasn't there among Christians. I'm talking about overall. It wasn't there. It wasn't like it was in 2016.
Wow.
The preachers were vocal. I mean, Christians were vocal. I'm talking about people were, even in the Republican primary, and I think it's good to have several candidates on the ticket. I think debate is good. I don't think there's anything wrong with debate. I think more the merrier. Now, I do think you have to get to a point where you get to the one, and then we support the one. That's going to be our person that we're supporting, to be our next president or the senator or congressman or whatever. But my point is, that fire in 2016 was unmatched. I mean, it was on fire, man. People were coming to D.C. Christians were coming out, getting everybody to vote. My Facebook page was lighting up with Christians, just supporting the president and supporting. We got to beat Hillary Clinton. And then we won. We won. Remember whenever the inauguration? Thousands of people were there. I mean, it's incredible. I remember going to the very first prayer breakfast after President Trump. And people couldn't even get in the room. They had to get another room because there were so many people. I mean, it was thousands of people there for the first national prayer breakfast.
I remember, yeah.
And I remember sitting in the room, and people were excited, and Christians were excited. And I'll never forget the admiral that got up and spoke at the first one. And man, he went off, and it was amazing. And whenever he finished, people stood and clapped, and tears were running down my face. And I brought my dad with me, and tears are running down his face. And this is what America's about. It's about freedom of speech. It's about, this is what it's about. And it was so exciting. And then people just begin to get what I call, they begin to take it easy.
They took it for granted.
They took it for granted.
Okay.
2017, the Bible calls it, they took it at ease in Zion. 2017, people just, they started taking it easy. 2018, people started taking it easy. We lost 2018. 2019, people taking it easy. People didn't wake up. 2020, Joe Biden's president. And people want to blame it on all kinds of things. They want to say the election was stolen. They want to say that the Democrat Party stole the election. And I'm not going to argue any of those things. What I'm going to say is what I know for sure, for certain, without shadow of a doubt. What I'm going to say is for a fact. 2016, the Christians were on fire. 2020, the fire wasn't nearly as bright. They took it easy. They stayed home. Many stayed home. Many were not engaged. Many were not involved. Now, I do have to say this. I sense that fire coming back.
I do too.
For 2024.
Yeah.
I sense it coming back. I mean, the Christians I feel like they're getting engaged again. They know that our country's at a crossroads. They know that we're at the most important election of our lifetime. And I know we say that every time, but this really is the most important election. Joe Biden cannot win. Now, I don't even believe he's going to be the nominee, personally. I believe it's going to be somebody else. But that's for another show. But we have to win. We have to win. I mean, our country is dependent upon it. We have to win. I want to read this to you. This is incredible. Daniel Webster in 1832 said this. And it's just so true. This was true in 1832 and it's true in 2024. He said, if the citizens neglect their duty and place, unprincipled men in office, the government will soon be corrupted. Laws will be made, not for the public good so much as for selfish or local purposes. Corrupt or incompetent men will be appointed to execute the laws. The public revenues will be squandered on unworthy men, and the rights of the citizen will be violated or disregarded. If a Republican government fails to secure public prosperity and happiness, it must be because the citizens neglect the divine commands and elect bad men to make and administer the laws. And tell me that that's not where we're at today. Tell me that's not where we're at, where we have bad men that are making our laws because the Christians, we sat on our blessed assurance and we did not stay engaged in the arena.
Well, James Madison said that our form of government, if you remember, was made for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly unfit for any other, right? So Daniel Webster, 1832, he's kind of in the shadow of James Madison there as far as chronologically, right? So I think that our founding fathers would have been disgusted with what this country has become a long time ago, maybe well over a century ago, right?
Yeah, back in the 70s.
70s, maybe even earlier. The 1960s, there was plenty of degeneracy and such things in the 1960s. Much earlier than that, right? You know, the embrace of the New Deal, right? 1930s, 1940s, this outgrowth of big government. I think that the various forms of tyranny that we have in the world today really have different, historical origins, right? But whenever it comes to culturally, I too feel like the 1960s is where a lot of this kind of trouble that we're talking about began. But I have a question for you about 2016. I think that your observation about a sort of a holy and patriotic fire was there that wasn't there in the subsequent elections. Do you think that is maybe because of 8 years of frustration with the Obama presidency? Do you think it's because of something that Donald Trump sort of awoke, among conservatives? You think it's a combination of those, or maybe it's none of it?
I think it's a combination of all of it.
Okay.
So one, I think you're right. I think it's a combination of having Obama for 8 years. And people said, we can't have that again.
Right.
And people were done with that. And I like what Rush Limbaugh said. Rush Limbaugh, speaking of Obama, back before he passed, he said that this country could survive 4 years of Obama. But he did not think that it could survive 8 years of Obama. But we did. We survived 8 years of Obama. And I think it frustrated people. And then after that, you had Hillary Clinton on the ticket. And people were like there's no way we can go from Obama to Hillary. Now,
4 more years of Obama, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think Obama, I think Hillary Clinton's a wicked person.
Yes.
I think she's evil. I think she is evil. I think she is the modern day Jezebel from that dealt with in the Old Testament. That's what I think about Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton, if you're watching, that's what I think. I think you're the modern day Jezebel. And hopefully somebody will screenshot that little piece, take about 10 seconds out, and send it to her. And because I'm not gonna run like the man did then. I'd love to have you on the show as well. We could talk about how evil you are, you and your husband. But anyway,
we need to emphasize that Dan is not, nor has he ever been suicidal. Just in case we can't have an episode 2.
Never have, but she's still an evil person.
Yes.
And people we cannot have this. There's no way that we can have Hillary Clinton. So I think it's part of that. And then I think Donald Trump, man, he gets up there and he starts saying things that we're all thinking.
Right.
And he starts saying things like, I'll never forget the night that him and Hillary Clinton was doing a town hall together. And Hillary Clinton talked about how he hasn't paid taxes, in so many years. And he said, if you wanted me to pay taxes, you should have changed it. But you didn't, because all your friends get the same tax breaks that I did. And whenever we saw that, we're like, what? Did he just say what I think he said?
Yep.
And everybody was like, he's right. Even that independents were like, he's right. And so, but my point is, I think it's a mixture of all of it.
Because you'd be in jail. That was another just beautiful debate.
Yeah.
Moment,
right? Oh, I love it. I love that. I about came out of my chair whenever he said that to her. And I think whenever people saw that, they was like, this is who we need. But then whenever he got there, I think COVID played a role. I do think that. But I think that Christians just was not as engaged in 2024 as they was in 2020. And that's why I believe we have Joe Biden.
So do you think that there's maybe a case to be made that perhaps Donald Trump didn't follow through on some of his campaign promises? Maybe he lost some enthusiasm between 2016 and 2020. So, like, for example, the wall is the big example that comes to mind immediately for me, right? Do you think that some of the fact that we lost 2020 could actually be pinned on Donald Trump? That's kind of a tricky question, I know.
So here's what I said about, I don't think the wall, for an example, but I do think that what some of it played a part. I think two things played a part. One, I think there was way too much emphasis on COVID. I think every single day having a press conference was horrible.
Yep.
I think that, yes, maybe you do have a press conference, the first day the second day, but come on, man, every single day.
It was blown out of proportion.
Way out of proportion,
Yes.
and then that's why the Democrats, we handed that to them, and then they took it and ran with it, and then they started voting, you could vote, they started letting you vote 6 months in advance, I think, and you can mail them in and all these things, and so all of that stuff happened. I think that we shouldn't have put so much emphasis on COVID. I think having the press conferences every single day was bad, because then governors started trying to do it. I mean, governors started having press conferences every day. So like Donald Trump would have one at 1 o'clock, and he would talk about 55 people died last night, or however many, and then we lost this, and we lost this, and the economy is this, and so then that was happening. And then right after he finished at 2 o'clock, the governors would all come on, and they would have their press conferences. And so I think there was way too much COVID talk.
Yes.
So I think that played a major part.
We played into the Democrats' hands.
Absolutely, we did, and they were like, we just handed it to them. I mean, we just literally handed them the winning formula for 2020. And so then you didn't have churches. You had a lot of your churches shutting down. I mean, I cannot tell you how many churches shut their doors because of COVID, because people wasn't coming. We were trying to have church outside. States wouldn't let us we could only have so many people. And so then you have businesses not operating. And so then you had a year there, where churches wasn't meeting, businesses wasn't operating. They was talking about the COVID every single day online. And so I think that played a major part in it.
Well, maybe you disagree, but I feel like COVID was a test run for a lot of new forms of tyranny that the enemy
Absolutely.
has in store for us.
Absolutely.
We take our religious liberty for granted in this country, and I don't believe that we should, because I remember during COVID, you talked about some of the social distancing orders and the stay-at-home orders and all the lockdowns that impeded our ability to worship. I'll never forget. It was in Kentucky. They were arresting churchgoers. They were snagging license plates from churchgoers in Kentucky, all because Democrat Governor Andy Beshear signed in 4 different unconstitutional mandates requiring people to stay at home, requiring them to avoid church. Right. So COVID was a microcosm, a small test run of what could be coming. Or at least what the enemy has planned for us if we're not careful, if we're not vigilant,
You're right.
if the Christians in this country, in this world, are not passionate and engaged.
I agree. I told my church this. So after COVID, we were trying to figure it out. I get it. Everybody was trying to figure out what was happening, what was going on, what was this, this virus and all that. And I get that. So my church went to, we tried outdoor church, where we still had church, where we just had it outside. We tried all kind of things. But I told my church after I got up to my church, and I apologized. I told my church, I said, I'm sorry. We should have told the governor of Louisiana to kick rocks. We should have told whoever, I don't care, President Trump, Joe Biden, Obama, it doesn't matter who the president was, we should have told them, no, we're not stopping. If you want to come to church, come to church. If you want to stay home, stay at home. But we're having church. It doesn't matter what the government says, we're having church. And I applaud those churches that they continued on. Now, we continued. We never stopped having church. We did do it outside. So we did try different avenues, and so we did do that. But I told my church, it will never happen again. They're going to have to arrest me. They're going to have to put me in jail, because it will never happen again to where we're not going to have church. So I think you're right on. They tested us and they won. They won. People folded like that.
But do you think people are going to put up with it a second time? See, sometimes I think along the lines of what you just said. They won, the test run. I mean, but there have been other attempts to circulate narratives throughout the media about, disease X or a new strain of COVID or a new strain of the flu. And the response I see, among the public is, oh, we're not falling for this again. So they won that round, but something tells me they might not win the next one, or they'll have to come up with a different psyop, a different way of manipulating us.
So the governor here, Governor Tate Reeves, he's already said, he's already made it very clear that he will not participate in any other shutdown. I mean, he's made it very clear. And he put out a social media post. He had a news conference where he said he was not going to do that. So I think that there's a lot of governors that are not going to shut down as well. And I think also there's a lot of churches. There's a lot of preachers that have already said, and not just Baptist denomination, but all across the entire board. I have a lot of friends that are involved in a lot of different denominations. And I mean, denominations across the board said, we're not participating in this again. We might have shut down this one time, or I didn't say we shut down because we just went outside, but we might have did that, but we're not doing it again. And so they can just have to arrest us. And so I think you're right. I think that it worked the first time, but I don't think it'll work again.
Oh, I hope you're right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I don't think you will. I think a lot of Christians are going to push back against that and say, no, it's not gonna happen again. And so, but I do want to say this to everybody that's watched this show today. I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. This is our brand new first episode, God and Country. Reed, thank you for joining me. And I have absolutely enjoyed, our conversation today and enjoyed getting to know you better. And I'm looking forward, to many more episodes. And I'm also looking forward to having guests on. We're going to have some guests on with us and some Christians that are involved in the political arena. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to, wherever you're watching this at, whether you're watching it on Lindell TV, whether you're watching it on YouTube, whether you're watching it on Substack, Rumble, wherever you're watching this, do me a favor. This helps us whenever it comes to getting around the different algorithms on the internet and on Google searches and things of that nature. If you will copy the link, whether it's a YouTube link, whether it's a Rumble link, whether it's a Substack link, whether it's the Mike Lindell link, copy and paste the link and send it to your friends. And get your friends to watch this show, God and Country. And Reed, before we go off, is there anything that you would like to add?
I could not have said it better myself, but God and Country, this is one of our many productions with the Midnight Ride, otherwise known as Midnight Ride TV. Like Dan, I too look forward to many, many more episodes and also some other shows that the other members of the Midnight Ride and I will be producing together. So
awesome.
This has been great, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. I've enjoyed it. I pray that you have a great day and looking forward to next time.
Hey guys, it's Reed here. I don't say this about a lot of people, but I have to say Mike Lindell is a real patriot, and we could not be more thankful to him and MyPillow for sponsoring today's episode of God and Country. Remember, go to MyPillow.com and save huge on a great night of sleep by entering the promo code Midnight Ride. Thanks.